Hi, and welcome to another episode of the ARC podcast with Jen and Lindsay. How are you doing today, Jen?
Hi, Lindsay. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, hanging in there, living the dream.
Oh, yeah. I know. I just found out I have to get knee surgery next week, which is crazy because I have like no time to prepare for this, but it's just another as I was driving back, I was like, I think I have crossed all of the you're officially old milestones.
Yeah, I feel
And
that way too sometimes. On Thursday, I have to go in to get the floaters blown out of my eyes.
oh God, yeah. See, that's another one.
Mhm.
And I need
And
to,
the
I've been putting it off to even go to the eye doctor because I
uh-huh.
know they're gonna tell me I need bifocals, and I don't even wanna. And I
Join the
know,
bifocal club with me. We can
yeah,
transition together. So they are giving me something called a fatigue lens to prep me for bifocals. And I said something to my mom about it. My mom's like, oh, be ready. That first couple of days with bifocals will make you want to throw up. And I'm like, I don't have time for that.
I know that's the
I need
thing.
to put
That's the
on my
thing,
glasses and I need to go.
right? And that's what I was telling this doctor today about the knee. I was just like, let's just put it this way: I don't have time to think about letting my knee heal. So whatever we do, I'm going to continue my life and do all this. So you just need to make sure that you tell me to get whatever equipment I need because I'm really never thinking about it. And especially if it feels better after a few days because of
Mhm.
them repairing my meniscus,
Right.
I'm going to totally forget about being really careful with it because I've been kind of careful with it, since I really
Hmm.
got it in September. So I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just
you
like,
didn't even hike at the retreat.
I know. Well, we can't even, I just don't have time. And I keep thinking it's going to get easier with these kids. And it's just like they keep needing more of my physical
Hmm.
abilities. And I'm just
Oh
like,
yeah.
guys, I don't this is just going to keep going downhill.
Hmm.
So, I gotta
Yeah,
be
Vivi
more.
on Halloween laid down and told me that she was exhausted and I needed to carry her. And I was like, no, you're in a squirrel costume. That
Yeah.
thing is heavy. I am not carrying you
I
all
carried
around our
Evie
house.
all around the zoo yesterday with a
Hmm.
big, huge thing on my knee, and everyone's looking at me like maybe that's not the best idea to carry a 70-pound child on your back. I don't know.
Yeah, and you're just like, well, this is my life. There really isn't a whole lot that I can do.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk because you and I had a similar experience um reading an article, which I love it when someone shares an article with me and then
Uh-huh.
it's a game changer. So
Yeah.
tell me about you sent this article to me, and
Hmm.
what did you say when you sent it to me?
Oh, I said that it was it from here on out is my Roman Empire. It's what I think of all the time because I just I'm sad that it happened and I am grateful that it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
So it was a article called "The Ones That We Sent Away," and it was in the um Atlantic, and it's just a amazing article about the author's mom who had a sister that got sent away because she had disabilities, and how the mom was just trying to build a relationship
Yeah.
with her
Yeah.
sister that had gotten sent away. And the mom had a grieving process because she was 6 when the sister got sent away.
Yeah.
And so her parents never spoke of it, never really talked about it until this woman was in high school, which is how you did it. And in the article, I was shocked by the famous people who
Yeah.
sent their kids away, and authors and different things that never ever mentioned that they had a child with a disability. And they could have been, I mean, I know it was the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s where everything has kind of changed since then. But
But I think
I,
that's exactly why we have to read it because so the
yeah.
author is Jennifer Senior, and she is
Hmm.
actually Pulitzer Prize winning author. So the writing is just phenomenal too.
Yeah,
And
it like sucked you in to the
uh,
point that like I like kept just reading it, and I knew I had other things to get done, and it's what, 10 pages, I
oh,
think.
this is not like this is a 20-page article in the Atlantic. So this is
Yeah.
like you got to sit down and carve out a little
Yeah.
time in the day.
I was like reading it in the car and like
Oh,
crying and all of that. Jeremy was driving. I was
I was gonna
not.
say.
I did not. I was not being unsafe. Let me back up. Like Jeremy was driving. We had to. I think Whitman had an appointment or something. We were going to it together, and I was reading this article like while he was driving. So,
I can't
and
even read it around my kids because it's
yeah,
so
yeah,
personal to us
it
that
was.
whew, I had to like take a beat before I went and picked up Jack from school. I read it like at noon one day and I pick up Jack around 1:30, well, quarter to two. And
Mhm.
I had to like listen to a funny podcast in between because I was like, this is
I
so
know.
personal to us because yeah, I think a lot of us as parents like understand and have read a lot of the history of disability. And, we were just talking about this like at our ARC retreat, but like
Mhm.
neurotribes, what is it, in a different key, those kind of books, and then articles about disability history and institutionalization, and what it looked like to be a family member to someone with a disability just 50 years ago is very different than what it looks like today.
Yeah. So
And
sometimes,
we
like, yeah. Sorry, you can finish.
no, I was
Okay.
just
I was gonna say sometimes like I think of things and I'm like, why aren't we farther? Why aren't we farther? And then I read an article like this and I'm like, holy cannoli, like this, look how far we've come. Like, I couldn't imagine if they would have made me give Wit away. Like, I would not have the life and the happiness that I have. I mean, we have our heart, but
yeah.
I wouldn't have that. So it's kind of like back in the day when kids were in the NICU, there was a doctor who housed them at freak shows in New York.
Oh,
So people could come in and like look at these sick babies getting better. And so like I mean, I couldn't imagine that as a parent.
yeah.
So,
I think the interesting thing about like articles like this too is um seeing like how like the whole family reacts to it and like
mhm,
understands. I mean, the mom this is like a sibling, so like she did not
mhm,
understand what was going on. But then when you look back on it and like really think about like, when you go to therapy and like go back into your family history and talk about like the things that like shape you, like it could 100% shaped this woman's life, not
mhm.
having a sister and then her sister is deleted from their life,
Yeah.
erased. I mean, they
Having a
erased.
sister for 2 years. And
Yeah,
I think the saddest part of the story is that the mom was sick
yeah.
and was going to the doctor, and the doctor is like, you've got to get rid of that baby. Like,
That's the other thing too. It's like it's almost like the intention of the systems, like the medical systems, was they were
mhm,
trying to do something good for these families. Like this is a good choice for you as a woman because you
mhm.
have other children to take care of. And this is like
Right.
we're making the best choice. This is like like the parenting thing where like you have to like make hard parenting choices and like kind of
Mhm,
put your foot down on some things because in the end it'll all be easier for everyone if everybody kind of if you treat if you punish your child now and then like they learn their lesson. It kind of feels the
mhm,
same way like these doctors were trying to help families like shape their families so that they would have an easier life when it and maybe in certain ways like practically speaking some days yeah, like it's easier to just erase somebody out of your life. But
mhm,
was it really easier like in the long run, and like was everybody's health and like education and everything like the same, and like then it hurts a whole generations and generations of family members
mhm.
of like
Yeah.
the sister's daughter is the one writing this, and she has her own children and is like, when you're pregnant and thinking about like what if my child has, is born with Down syndrome, or What if, you know, when they're going through their milestones, oh, they didn't meet that milestone yet. What if there's something going on, you know? And then knowing that there's like this whole person that was erased out of
Mhm.
your family's life because of those very things is like it shapes like how you think about your own children and like and then
Yeah.
their children. And
Mhm.
yeah. And then they found out that this woman with a disability had a rare genetic
Mhm.
disability, which can really help obviously future generations too to kind of understand and know earlier on the early interventions that can really help because this woman like continued to learn
Mhm.
once she wasn't in a terrible institution. She was in Willowbrook, which is like
An
the
awful
worst.
institution that
Yeah,
I mean, I can't believe that it took so long for parents to figure out how, like,
yeah.
awful it was. I think that it was somebody, I forget, because it's been a few weeks since I read the article, but it was, an author or somebody who, like, gave their daughter clothes
Yeah.
and went to visit, and she was never in the clothes, she was always in and they just, like, treated it almost like a factory more than anything, and those pictures were heartbreaking,
Oh,
with all of the kids just piled up in a crib to be taken to therapy.
yeah. That's the Geraldo Rivera interview.
Mhm.
Basically are in this article, and I've seen that documentary, and it's probably the hardest thing I've ever watched,
Yeah,
and
it's gut-wrenching.
it really is, and
Mhm.
just so sad. But I also think it's like perfect timing for me to read this article because I'm working on this sub minimum wage bill
Yeah.
here in Ohio and at the federal level. They've been doing some interested party um,
Mhm.
meetings, and I've been listening to people, and I'm telling you, it's mostly people who want to keep sub minimum wage, and their reasoning is a lot of times that these are just safer places for them to be, and their child wants to be there, and
Mhm.
this is, without this, what would we do? And I just keep going back, and I remind myself when I, keep charging along at this because it's such an uphill battle that these segregating people is just never the answer. It
Oh, it's not.
cannot be the way to go because it's just like the one this woman was then brought into a regular home with like family members that were taking care of her. She thrived. Like
Mhm.
she became a
Yeah.
part of the family, and she was actually learning like well into her old age,
Mhm.
and which they tell you like that doesn't happen, for people with
Mhm.
some cognitive disabilities that have like lower, because they had determined her IQ was like a 40 or something,
Mhm.
and then you're like seeing even the mom and the daughter that wrote this where they were seeing things that she had learned to do from since the last time they had seen her,
Mhm.
and
I
like
know, that was so incredible.
yeah. And so an institutionalization, even if it seems good and it seems like everyone's happy and they're taken care of and they're safe,
Mhm.
the safety piece pales in comparison to like what we're supposed to like want
Mhm.
for people with disabilities overall in our
Right.
communities. And we never
Yeah.
see these people. So then you never see those whole generations of people were erased.
Mhm.
And so then it was like eventually people started saying, no, I'm not going to institutionalize my child. Like I'm going against doctor's orders. And
Mhm.
then those are the people that like paved the way for the IDEA and ADA. And so without those people and like putting their children out in the community and including their children in and the children themselves and the people themselves, joining communities and choosing
Mhm.
against institutionalization, that's the reason why my kids will be able to do this a lot easier. And
Yes.
I don't want them to have these options on the table because
Mhm.
it literally makes no sense. You go to school the whole time with everybody else, and then when you're 18, it's like, well, why don't you just go to this place and make 55 cents an hour and be
Right.
around just people with disabilities? And it's like,
Mhm.
no, no. And so we need to, it's a generational, just like there was a whole generation of people that put their children in institutional settings because the doctors told them to.
Mhm.
Now we've moved on to a generation that learned from the previous that if this inclusion is the right way, and community integration and competitive employment
Mhm.
is the way we should go. And we need to continue that and stop the practices that were maintained for so long and that are so clearly wrong, as this
Mhm.
article shows. And so we highly recommend everyone read this. It's in the Atlantic, and actually it's from September 2023. So you can actually get this article online. Like there's PDF versions of it now, so
Mhm.
you don't have to subscribe.
Yeah,
Although I
don't subscribe. It's a free article now. So, but yeah, it's an amazing read. I loved it when the sisters found things in common.
yeah,
That was my favorite part of the whole article, was like when they reconnected and that they realized that they had all of these things in common.
I know. And then like part of the article too is they ended up doing genetic testing,
Mm-hmm.
and they found that there's like this rare disorder that she has, like a genetic like deletion of one of her chromosomes, and they were able to find, because of where we are today,
Mm-hmm.
a group
I did
of
love this
people,
part too.
yes, that
Mm-hmm.
has the same disability. And then they found a family with a child who has this disability, and this child is thriving, like
Mm-hmm.
talking all day, and like, and so it was really neat to see where how I mean, it was like it's like perfect evidence of how far we've come and how important it is,
Yeah.
early intervention, and get that, have children go to school with other kids and
Mm-hmm.
get the helping. I mean, early intervention, this article is like such a
Mm-hmm.
huge uh like marker of like how important early intervention is. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing more that can be said about this family, that it was so clear that if they wouldn't have institutionalized their child at 2 years old, and they would have instead gotten her some speech and OT and PT, and they would have put her in regular preschool, and she would have had a much, much different life.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think that, the mom or the sister of the woman talking about her grief with that and wondering like what it could have been like is something that I think we all can relate to
Yeah.
a little bit, I think, because we wonder what it would be like to not have a disability in our life. And she has wondered what it is like to meet her sister who had a disability because
Yeah.
nobody had an answer for her. And I can't imagine that like unknown
Yeah.
of when's my sister coming home? When's my sister coming home? And then her sister never coming home, a grandma moving into the
Yeah.
bedroom with her. And
Yeah. It's so tragic. Like it's like such a huge
I
trauma.
know.
And like the author makes it really clear that the trauma is collective for the whole community. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it like goes on for generations. And so these decisions that we make, and that, that was like a huge, it seems so different than some minimum
Mm-hmm.
wage and what I'm talking about in sheltered workshops. But it is like a decision that seems like the right decision at the time, that all the medical experts are telling you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're trying to do your best for your family. I think we're all just trying to do our best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then you have this knowledge now that there's like this trauma that happens to a whole family when somebody's in your family is segregated away. And so it's not okay. It's not okay
Mm-hmm.
for, the person who you're taking out of your home and putting them in a different place where they're not interacting with anybody with a disability anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're and we're missing out, like, as a community. Like how it was so cute, like the part where the like sister was like leaning her head on her
Mm-hmm.
sister's
I
shoulder, and
know.
um like the author's mom was like in total bliss. Like she was like, this is all I wanted, was just a sister to like lean her head on me.
Mm-hmm.
And oh,
I know all of it.
missing out, man.
I know, and it just shows how far we've come. I know we have a long way to go, but it just shows how far we've come.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they talked about like the stigma associated to like children with disabilities was so great then that it like they thought that it would like affect their whole family in such a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
But then like in like the way that they went about it, like they basically like put no support structures like in place at that point, like there was no school and there were no like, even they said even like churches and were like at that time in
Mm-hmm.
our history were turning people away and families away that had a child with a disability. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have no support structure, I mean, you understand why these families made this decision.
Oh yeah. And back then you never questioned your doctor.
That's
Like
right.
you whatever your doctor said was Bible and you walked away. Like there was no such thing as a second opinion. There was no such thing as,
Yep.
more educated type of your doctor said it and then you were like, "Oh, okay, well, if he said this, then it must be true."
Yeah. I know you were talking about like Arthur Miller's son. He's like the renowned author, had Down
Mhm.
syndrome, was put in his, and he didn't even like mention him in any of his works. And then
Oh.
lots of Nobel Prize winners. And yeah, like it was just really
Yeah.
interesting in the article. And I was just listening to a doctor on a different podcast who's autistic. And a lot of times, if you're a doctor or have a very specialized field, you might be autistic yourself and you probably have kids, like a lot of times, like those
Mhm.
fields, there's a lot of people in those fields, like the higher percentage of people have autism. And a lot of the people that were at Willowbrook had autism,
Mhm.
um, and they were just discarded so painfully when like, ugh, there's so much like potential for them to like be a part of their community and just thrive, if they were given the right tools.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think it's good to like keep having these conversations and
Mhm.
like I don't know, I think inclusion and like integrating people with disabilities in our communities like makes sense ideally, and then we kind of get stuck like practically doing it, and it's a lot of work, and
Mhm.
our systems and like our communities are not built to like easily integrate everybody. But I
Right.
think the articles like this are a good reminder that like the work is worth it,
Mhm.
and um it's just this is the right path. Like just keep going down this path, even though it's hard and even though you're going to hit the wall 100 times.
Yep.
You have to, say no to like anytime you feel that gut feeling like, well, I just don't like that my child only has access to like this one segregated program. Like it's not, why isn't it with the
Mhm.
other kids? Like why
Right.
aren't they with people their age? Or why does he have this job and it's supposed to be in the community, but he's getting paid less and there's little expectations from him. And if something goes wrong, like they told him just to stay home and stuff like that, that like you should just have this gut feeling like that's not right. Like we can do better as a
Mhm.
society. And it's
Oh,
not just on
yeah.
parents. It shouldn't just be on us, right, Lindsay?
No,
Like,
no, it shouldn't. We have so much on our plates already
yeah,
with balancing it and figuring it out, and every decision feels like life or death. I mean,
yeah,
I'm still very much in that as a parent. It feels very much life and death for me a lot of days
yeah,
where I just can't process it, fathom it, all of it. Like, I
yeah,
mean, you're just like you're living day to day and you have to make big decisions. And
yeah.
I thought like as Whitman got older, that feeling would go away and it hasn't. Like it always just feels like life or death. Like it feels like someday he'll look back at me and be like, because you made this decision on
Right, right.
September 7th of 2021, my life is forever ruined. So
Yeah. It's a
that
pretty heavy pressure, and that's why I don't think that we should bear it all. And I don't think we
great.
always we should always have to convince people to do these things that we know are right. So I'm just really glad that there's articles like this out there in the mainstream, because
Mhm.
every once in a while we'll see one like in like the Mighty and different, what are they, disability like journals kind of things
Mhm.
that we get, or we'll
Yeah.
see, the arc will share something or whatever. But it's neat to like know,
Stay
and I hope,
mainstreamed.
yeah, and share it with your family. Like I printed
Mhm.
one article out and I shared it with my mom and like some of my friends, and
Mhm.
I just think it's good because we're always trying to like convince people. Like I was just
Yeah.
telling you like about Evie playing volleyball, and
Mhm.
I put her on like the school volleyball team. And I will say, like, everybody has been phenomenal. And it was such a great experience. And Evie had a blast. And I had a blast. The girls on the team, just the sweetest little pumpkins. And
Mhm.
everybody made like such great progress. And it was just neat to be a part of it, because, like, I don't really get to be a part of like school functions,
Mhm.
um, because I'm usually on the side doing something with Evie or Jack that's like just for them, and not, they're never like a part of their,
Mhm.
especially sports or like extracurricular activities. We try, and I'm always pushing the boundaries, but it just never works out very well. And so this was like our first time really it worked out. But I'll say that like, oh, I struggled in the middle of it because the other girls on the team were getting so much better, like
Mhm.
week to week, like marked progress. And I was like, man, maybe we shouldn't be here. Like, I don't want to hold them back from like, they had like a tournament at the end. And then I kept questioning my own self and my own bias. And I thought, if I'm this bias and I'm raising
Right.
two kids, then everyone has to be kind of thinking along the same lines. And I did have like a parent say like, oh, did you know that there's like a Down syndrome specific like volleyball team? You should totally check that out. And it was kind of like, I know she did it with the like totally great intentions, but it always comes back to me like, so I should just have her play on that team and not this team. Like
Right.
that's
Like
kind of her place.
the whole point was for her to be included and to offer inclusion.
Yeah.
And they were saying, oh, well, hey.
Yeah. It's just like you're going down a road and then there's like all these like other paths you can take. And then
Mhm.
sometimes people are like, you kind of have to go down this path. Like sometimes the road just like blockades and you just need
Right.
to, like pick a way to go, you
Mhm.
know? And a lot of times I feel like I'm like going down that road and I'm shoveling like the road myself. Like I'm trying to
Yeah.
like, and it feels really, really hard. And like we're going uphill a lot of times. And
Mhm.
whew, and then I don't want to turn off that road, but then sometimes I do. And like we play in the Challenger League and
Right.
different things that I'm more than happy to turn off that road. When my kids, when I feel like it's a really good, well-run program, where I feel like
Mhm.
it's a consistent program, where I feel like they're doing it without being ableist and everybody's involved for the right reasons, then I think it's like, why not?
Right.
And
Yeah.
if we need, if there's safety concerns and things like that, like it just, everything gets really fast. Like, and my
Mhm.
kids, like, I mean, if we were to play baseball with kids her age right now, it would be really, she would get hit in the head with the ball. Like it
Right.
just would be.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I don't know. We have to keep talking about it and thinking about ways that our community can like come to our aid and
Yeah.
help us out with this and our
Mhm.
own, and like really think about our own biases too, and like
Mhm.
why we're choosing to have our kids be in like more segregated settings. And like sometimes it's fine, like I said,
Mhm.
but the more we do that, the more like they're not, like other people aren't seeing our kids. Like our kids need
Right.
to be seen. And our
Yeah.
friends with disabilities who advocate, and when they are seen, like when they're giving their testimony or on in board meetings or wherever, I mean, it's like those are always the best testimonies. That's
Yeah.
always the best. It's like
Mhm.
their voice is like the voice we want to hear from the most. So like if they're hidden away in a segregated setting, God, what a loss, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And every time I think like Evie should like, we get so, I almost feel selfish like being with Evie all the time because she
Mm-hmm.
is such an an energy and like a force. And I hate to be like cliche or like romantic about my kids because I don't want people
Mm-hmm.
to get the wrong idea like, oh, everything's just hunky dory and like sunshine
Right.
and rainbows. It's not. There's challenges, but like I
Mm-hmm.
will say that like uh my kids are pretty phenomenal people and
Yeah.
it's neat to watch them grow and like the
Mm-hmm.
reward of like when Evie took her first steps. I can't even, you know, like don't you feel like that when Wit like
Oh yeah.
walked in?
Halloween, like people were stopping Whitman in the street just to say hi or just to give him a high five because they know he loves high fives. And at one point he was transitioning from trick or treat. It was snowing. We had a snowstorm the
Yeah,
night of Halloween. It was absolutely
gotta love
crazy.
it.
And we were standing at the end of our driveway. My in-laws were handing out candy. And then these two girls saw that Whitman was kind of having a hard time. And one of the girls was like, would it be okay if I walked with him? Like, walk him into our house. And Whitman goes, nah, go. And she went, okay, see you tomorrow. Like, wasn't annoyed, was unfazed that he was even remotely upset. We're like, we are phased when he is upset, and we are rushing to get him to be happy because it's a dignity thing and it's a selfishly it's a thing where we don't want people judging us as if we are bad parents because we are doing the best we can with what we have in a situation that is not ideal and 99% of the time unplanned. But it was just nice to see like this sweet girl be like, hey, would it be okay if I walked him? Sweet girl, I've never seen you before in my life. I mean, if you
Yeah.
want to walk him, if he says yes, then who am I to deny this? But
I know, but isn't it funny like when it's you, you're like, oh my God, we got to stop the meltdown and like
mhm,
stop people from looking at me. But then when you see like the mom at Target whose child's having a meltdown and it's like clear that this is an autism meltdown right now,
mhm,
all I want is for that mom to not feel like she has to rush out of there.
mhm,
I want her to like let it play out the way it needs to for your
mhm.
child and for you to feel like you have your dignity and like whatever you need. But also
Yeah,
I don't want them to have like to hide and rush and like get out of there. I'm just like, no, this is like this is part of it.
mhm,
Like just you know, so it's funny. Like I know we all like go to that space where we're like,
yeah.
oh, I don't want
We
anybody
did
to
on
see me.
Saturday when we tried a restaurant with Whitman, and we hadn't done that in a while because Whitman went through a very weird stage where he would not get out of the car
Mm,
for anything. So we always just did like we'd meet people, but we would do the takeout and like stay there long enough to where like Jeremy and I would take turns and stay in the car with Whitman and then we would leave. And we went to this robotics thing. Whitman loves robotics. We're really excited for him to grow into that because it seems like he has found something. But one of Jeremy's family members was there and she looked at him and went, hey, wait, you want to go to lunch with us? And he went, yes. So we got there, it was very busy, and we had to wait a couple of minutes for them to get a table for us because it was 9 people. And by then Whitman was done and he kept asking to go to the car. And I was like, no, we're gonna eat. And you can always tell how things are gonna go if Whitman will let you pick him up. And yes, he is 9 years old. Yes, he is as long as me, but I will pick him up until I can no longer do it because it helps shift us into a better place. So I did that and he was crying and we got him to sit down, but he was still like doing this like every now and then a little yell and a little like
yeah,
cry. The people we were with, we love them so much because they are unfazed
yeah,
by the meltdown. They have 3 kids, and all 3 kids were talking to Vivi, talking about the Ohio State game that was on
yeah.
our table, like all of that. Like nobody cared. And then Jeremy was getting very, very restless, and his cousin Josh looked at him and said, "What, are you okay?" And Jeremy's like, "I wish people would stop staring." And Josh goes, "Who cares? We're here.
Yeah.
We're eating. We're a family. Like, we're gonna have fun." He's like that very like he's amazing, but he's just like very forceful, like Clark
Yep.
W. Griswold.
Yep.
We are here to have fun. type of, no matter how awful it is, it will be fun in some capacity.
Yeah.
And like once he said that, like Jeremy like eased back.
Good.
And then it was just like one of those, like we worked through it. It was a 5-minute meltdown in the grand scheme of things. Like we have had a million times worse than what that was. So, but all in all, like it was just nice that somebody said that, like, so what if they're staring? Let them, like, you guys have equal amount to be able to sit here with us.
Right.
So
I know,
it's not like he's
about that distraction kind of piece, and like, are we a distraction at the restaurant, or is my child a distraction in the classroom, and or is Evie a distraction on the volleyball team because she doesn't rotate as fast as like, and then I'm like, I don't, it takes a couple extra minutes for them to rotate. Is that gonna like throw everything off? Like how much is that really? Or like you're at a restaurant and the child's like crying or on an airplane. I mean, is it like, oh, kid's crying over there, but then you like go about your thing and like your day's not even like, but our day is like
ruined. We think about it over and over again and replay, like, could we have done something better? Could we have done, and on Saturday, like I said it to Jeremy, and I don't know if I needed to say it for myself, but I was like, you know what? It was nothing. It was amazing. Like, it was fine. I wish that we could hang out with that side of the family more. They're very busy with their kids and we are very busy with ours. So it just was great that it worked out that way. But I told Jeremy that I wish that we had that type of support. Like we have that support from them, but I wish they weren't so busy or like we were involved in the same activities. Because having them like there made it a little better. His cousin's wife is a county dispatcher for the sheriff's department, and then Josh is a firefighter. So they understand it. And I told Jeremy, I go, I wonder, because autism and disability training has come so far for us, and even in like the last 5 years, I would say that they are like, they hear and see like aspects of Whitman out in the field, and it makes them want to be a part of Whitman's life because what they hear, what they see, the magic that can happen when you have somebody with a disability with you and the fun that it is. I mean, Erica's face on Saturday when she said, hey, you want to go to this restaurant with us? And he went, yes. And she was just like,
amazing.
Yeah. He said yes to me. Like, so I think that, I think that that's a bonus.
Yeah, that's what I mean about people. Like, I feel selfish when I'm experiencing life with Evie and Jack, and then other people aren't getting to as much. Because like when people get it and they are those good support people, it's like know how much it like made their day to like do.
And then like later in the day, Erica sent me a text because I had thanked her. I was like, thank you so much. I'm so sorry that we had that like bump in the road, but it was only a few minutes. Like I always feel like I have to justify it for everybody because I'm so afraid like the invite will stop.
Yeah.
Like we will see them again and they will be like, well, he yelled the last, like something like that. And she was like, can you give me a list of like things that I can do to help you? Like, because I felt the most helpless. She's like, you literally weren't bothering anybody. But then I look over and I see you guys and I'm just like, oh, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
And I was like, just make sure that Vivi is safe, because that's like the other part of it is that we have this daughter that we still have to maintain and take care of. And she's very much in the stage where she knows her brother is different and she does not like that. Yeah. And I know that like she will come out of that stage, but while she is in that stage, it is my job as her mom to keep her protected as well. So Jeremy and I always joke that something will happen. Whitman will do something that is just like very out of line for what Vivi like expectations are. And I'll be like, that's where she's going to tell the therapist it began.
Yeah.
It all began in this moment. Last night, sidebar from this serious conversation, I found this really cool like pony thing that you can like ride a pony down the street. It's like a hoverboard with like a pony.
Yep.
And I showed it to her to see if she might want it for Christmas. And she goes, oh my gosh. She ran away and I looked at Jeremy and went, yep, that's where she's going to tell the therapist to be. It all began the night my mom showed me a pony. But anyway, this year too for Whitman, like something that I'm truly grateful for, and I tell them and try and show them, is that Whitman's teacher has never done like inclusion before in her classroom.
Yeah.
This is her first year full on doing it, and she's killing it
Yeah.
in the like inclusion.
Yeah.
And so I always like feel blessed and honored and thank like all of it, all the emotions, that happy emotions that you can feel when I do see kids stop and say hi to Whitman, even if he's having a hard time or like wanting to volunteer, because if it weren't for the inclusion that the school was doing, I mean, because I never like I know that it could change in junior high, but I never ever want a kid to be like, oh, that's Whitman. Like I want one thing about inclusion that I'm really liking, and it's what Ood said, and it will be the analogy I probably use forever. That, you know, automatic doors started existing because of people coming back from the Vietnam War. And now, like, I mean, I've run into a broken automatic door before because I'm so used to having it open for me.
Yep. Yep.
So, and I want Whitman to be the automatic door of like the school where
Yeah.
like kids just invite him and he hangs out with them and they understand his limitations. They understand without him being annoying.
Yep.
So I never ever
I
want.
mean, you went to school and junior high and high school, like there's just everybody's kind of annoying at times. So it's kind of like, and I know what you're saying, but it's just, and I have the same stuff with Evie and Jack. But I also think like, I don't know, we put so much pressure on ourselves to like try to fit to this mold sometimes. And I'm just like, I'm not on board with this mold that all of these kids, and I just think younger generations are just getting so much better about breaking out of the more different you can be and are allowed to be, the better it is for our kids to be. So if you're allowed to go to school and just not have to be exactly like everybody else. And when I look around and I see the kids like walking out of the building in the junior high, like I'm feeling good about it because they seem to not, it doesn't look like, oh, the football players all hang out and like there's the band kids and or there's the cheerleaders, and that's not what it looks like anymore. And so, and maybe I'm being like too general, but just from what I've experienced with Jack in junior high so far, I'm feeling a lot better about this generation and the younger. There's just a permission to be more yourself, you know? And so then that helps everybody because I just want my kids to be themselves. Like,
really 100%.
And I think it's good to like allow for more processing time. It helps everybody. Like you said, like the automatic like universal to gonna help our kids are gonna help other kids too. And so because our kids are included in the class and then they get like special help with something, then there's gonna be a kid that's sitting next to them who's like, you know, English is their second language or something that's like needing the same kind of support. Or there's going to be a child who has dyslexia that's undiagnosed and then they're getting it because there's a intervention specialist in the room now. You know what I mean? Like we're not, our families are not holding anybody back. I feel like we're all like the work that we do as parents advocating, we're going to like actually pull all of our schools and places of employment and everywhere else forward into where we're supposed to be actually. And like you're saying, like you thought things would be better by now, like, but we have made a lot of progress. Like I feel the same. Like I'm not gonna be happy until like everywhere is a sensory friendly. We don't even have to have sensory friendly because everything's gonna be sensory friendly. Like I'm not gonna be happy until there's another version of the Taylor Swift concert movie that doesn't have flashing lights, you know? Like I want to be all of the accessible options for everybody. And the only way it's going to work is if we keep going out in the community and like seeing things that don't work and then advocating to change. But if we hit a wall and we're like, oh, this is unsafe now, my kid's never going to a movie again, then we're not making any change that way, and we're not going to make it easier for later generations. So I'm thankful for this article and for you for sharing the article with me and like having.
I'm thankful for you too.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, everybody, because I think this is a it's a good one to have. And I want everybody to keep thinking about the sub minimum wage law because I think it's going to be introduced here in pretty
Can
soon.
you
And
quickly just define what some minimum wage
I'm
is,
sorry.
just in case other
Yes.
families, like somebody doesn't know what it is?
So there's an old law from 1938, from the Fair Labor Standards Act that says that people with disabilities can be paid less than minimum wage. So the minimum wage in Ohio is $10.10. There are hundreds of people, thousands of people in Ohio making less than $10.10 an hour. Some are making as low as like 25 cents an hour. Based on they do like a valuation of the person. Mostly these places are like that are doing this that have these. They're called 14C certificates.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's like 60 to 69 of these places still in Ohio. And if you have one of these certificates, you can then pay your employees less than minimum wage. And they're usually found at sheltered workshop settings. So uh, it's just something that in Ohio, there's been several states. I think we have 14 or 15 states now that have passed laws saying you cannot pay people sub minimum wage. The federal government, like our federal legislation, is being looked into. I think they're going to introduce it hopefully next year. They're doing some interested party meetings now. But in
Mm-hmm.
Ohio, we did our interested party meetings, and now they are going to introduce a bill in Ohio here shortly. So I kind of want to like start some conversations around it. And if you do have questions about it, definitely reach out to us at the ARC. And if you do have any testimony or anything you want to share about it, let us know because we really are going to be developing that. We really want to hear from you on it because we think it's an important piece of legislation culturally
Mm-hmm.
and really make a big change in Ohio where we want to go. We're an employment first state. We want to make sure people with disabilities have access to competitive integrated employment. And in order to do that, we want OOD and DODD to fully fund all the programming that helps people with disabilities, transition out of high school into community employment. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to work 40 hours a week and
Mm-hmm.
have this perfect job. It just doesn't. So
Right.
there's not there's not there's extremes on this. There's the sheltered workshop that's paying people sub minimum wage, and then there's like someone working at Microsoft and living their dream. There's a lot in the middle there. And so we just don't want the extremes to like basically dictate, like how
Mm-hmm.
employment looks. So
Right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we can't wait to talk more next time. Have a great day.
bye.